He is Bob Pollock from the Extension Service with us here this morning. What do you want to talk about with all this rain falling here this morning?
Hope everybody got all their chores done that they wanted to do.
Yeah. Oh, my.
That was darn near impossible this season.
Yeah, there's still plenty to be done outdoors. And the leaves aren't even down all the way yet.
No,
We're going to be
they're not.
mowing in December.
Maybe the snow will bring them down.
479-1160 or 349-WCCS if you have a question you'd like Bob to field for you here this morning. But that is an interesting question, because if the leaves aren't down yet when the snow starts covering the ground and you're not mowing them, then they're going to lay on the lawn all year and until the spring. And, well, what does that do to the lawn, if anything?
Hopefully we'll get a window or two to be able to clean that up eventually.
Okay, we haven't had that window yet.
I know we haven't. But they might be wet, but they might be there, so you'll just have to rake up wet leaves. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. What else are you going to do?
Yeah. Well, you like to just run over it and chop them all up.
You know, if you had to move plants around or plant plants recently, you know, you're kind of mudding them in, but just kind of dodge between the rain and do it and move on.
Seeing you here this morning, I did bring in a seed head off of one of the flower, I think the zinnias, and it's all black and everything after the frost that killed the flowers off. But inside it, you take that outer covering off, and inside there are tons of seeds in there. And what do I do with those? Do I dry them off, or just let them spread them out and let them dry, or how do I do that?
Yeah, spread them, get them out of the
seed head
pods that are around there, and shake them out. Some of those will, as they mature more and dry down, a lot of times those seed pods will open up themselves to release those seeds.
Some of those did that.
And then, just spread them out, make sure that they're dry and there's, aren't any that's moldy or anything.
Yeah.
And then you can put them in a container.
Yeah.
Preferably something, normally you buy seeds in a little paper.
Yeah, a little paper envelope.
So you can put them in just a regular envelope and mark them as to what you think they are.
Okay. So one of those
put a date on there.
One of those seed heads is going to contain 100 or so seeds. When you buy the packages, there's maybe 20 or 30 of those in there. One seed head has that many in there, as 6 or 7 times what comes in one of those envelopes. I should have enough zinnias
You should have.
to populate the entire neighborhood. They just take them and spread them out everywhere.
Spread them out and see what happens.
Yeah, well terrific.
Or you can separate each individual one and get a flat and put the inserts in there and seed every one in its own little cell. And so grow the transplant so that when the time comes you have...
I've already got a flower plant there.
So you can do it both ways if you'd want to. One is to seed some of those plants so that you'll have them as transplants to put in. And then you could also just sow some seeds in other places and see how that goes.
Okay. All right. Well, that sounds like fun, actually.
Yeah.
Come the spring, we'll see what the zinnia crop is going to be like. All right. So that's one thing.
And sowing the seeds, they'll germinate and start to grow when the time is right for the most part to do that. So as the soils warm up and we get the right growing conditions, then they'll start to sprout.
All right.
Now when you just scatter them, you might get too many that you'll have to thin them out. But you have more seeds than you probably really need anyhow.
All you do is scatter them? You don't dig a trench and cover them over?
No, because those seeds are pretty tiny.
Yeah.
So they just kind of scattering them on top and maybe just sprinkling a little bit of soil over top of them is all it'll take.
That's all you really need to do.
Yeah, and because if you think about it, if you would have left those seeds, and obviously some of those seeds where the plants were, some of those seeds have dispersed already.
Yeah.
So they'll lay there over the winter, and it's just going to be that, and they're right on top of the soil, but that freezing and thawing action and the moving around and the splashing of soil and things will just slightly cover those, and some won't get covered as much, others will get covered maybe too much. But we generally don't want to plant seeds any deeper than 2 times the diameter of the seed.
Okay.
So that's not a very big,
big
amount on these very tiny seeds.
Yeah, you're basically dragging a pencil through the ground and dropping seed in the little trench that you're building.
Yeah, and some seeds that you buy a lot of times now are coated because the seed may be so small that it's very difficult to deal with, and so they're able to coat it, make it a little bit bigger, and so it's easier to
So it behaves
handle.
a lot like grass seed.
Yeah, and it almost, it may be oblong naturally, but with that coating it makes it rounder, so it'll move around easier. You can get it seeded easier, of course, with a round thing versus a flat thing, trying to shake it out and get it in the
All right, that's
seeded.
good.
Yeah.
That's good. All righty, it is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS AM 1160, 101.1 FM. We're talking with Mr. Bob Pollock this morning.
So there's, and during the winter months, a lot of times it's a good time to prune things.
Okay.
If you get the opportunity to do that. And in a lot of deciduous trees, that's the case. So whether you're going to do it or you're going to hire somebody to come in and do that pruning, those winter months can be a good time to do that. And there's a couple, especially like elms and oaks. There's a disease called oak wilt that can be a real problem and is in different places around the country and more severe in certain parts than others. But anyhow, those oak trees are susceptible to that. So they try to avoid pruning those when the leaves are on the trees. You can prune out dead wood and things like that and do some routine maintenance. But if you need to do some thinning and any major work, they like to do that when the tree is dormant because you have a much less chance of moving that disease around when you do that. So, and then there's with elms, and there's a couple diseases primarily transferred by a beetle, a bark beetle, and during the dormant season before growth begins, then that allows you're not going to be moving that disease around either. Once the tree starts to grow, those beetles can be attracted to that cut surface, especially in the spring. And so they're more attractive to that, and it's kind of like a beacon saying, "Come attack me." So if we do that,
a little tree pheromone going on there, huh?
Yeah. So if we do it while the tree is dormant, then we greatly reduce the risk of being able to spread that kind of a disease.
All right. So. There you go. So people can be doing that about now, too.
Yep.
All righty. It is Indiana in the morning. We have a caller this morning. Good morning. Very well.
Good. How are you? I hope so. As long as it doesn't get too cold. It looks like we're going to get down into the 20s here, maybe even hit the 20 mark, and I'm sure some spots will be...
Tonight.
Not tonight. Oh, is it tonight?
Tonight's low is 26.
Okay, there you go. Well, so in spots it will get down to that temperature. So that's getting too cold, yes. So if you can cover them, give them a little protection, that would be great. If they're not mature yet, if you need to, in some cases you might need to harvest them and then okay, you'd like them to grow a little bit more. Although they at this point they're going to do that very slowly.
So they are pea-sized? They're peas.
Yeah, so if you can build a little high tunnel over them, essentially make what we call a low tunnel, so a little greenhouse over them that can help hold the heat in, that would be beneficial. Hey, you're welcome.
There you go. People still
and cabbage, cabbage and some of those other cold crops like that can still be in the ground. The kale, spinach, so those things are resistant to cold temperatures. But when we get down in the low 20s, things are going to freeze. Yeah. So that moisture, and we have a high moisture content in those vegetables, and so when it gets cold enough that the moisture can freeze, then that's the end of that unless we get them harvested.
Some people leave carrots in the ground all through this winter season as well. Do they cover those over with straw or something?
Usually you'll want to mulch those in because we're essentially trying to store them. We're not trying to grow them over the winter. They should have matured, and so there they are in the soil. We're going to try to store them there because they'll probably last longer. There's more humidity, more moisture. and they're protected by the insulation of the ground to a point. If we stay cold enough for long enough, the ground's going to freeze, and then that vegetable will freeze also, and then turn to mush. So we've got to, by mulching that helps keep the soil temperature warmer for longer. Is what it. In this case, it's kind of reverse. In the summertime, we use mulch to help keep the soil cooler. So when it gets colder, we're doing the reverse effect, and so having that mulch is going to help that and help those last longer.
All right, there you go. A couple of things to think about as you're looking at your garden that is probably not looking near as pretty as it was a couple of months ago.
Definitely not.
All right, thanks,
Although
sir.
Challenging year, that's for sure, and it continues to be.
That's a good word for it. We'll see what this winter brings to us. Thank you, Robert.
You're welcome. Thank you.
This is Bob Pollock from the Extension Service, 465-3880.
80. Very good.
3880, that's the number for the extension. If you have a question for Bob.
Yep.
Okay. All right, it is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS, AM 1160 and 101.1 FM.